What if a former director of national intelligence claims Barack Obama, former president, sabotaged American democracy just last week? Tune in for that and more, especially on the Epstein files with Trump and RFK Jr. updates and the stock market hitting record highs. Stay tuned for that and more. Hope this catches everybody doing well. It's Joe at the Middle Ground Mike. This is our solo podcast for the week. Just like in the intro, there's some of the things we're going to talk about. Let's really, today we're going to dive into the explosive claims that are starting to really shake everything in the establishment, and especially, and I don't even want to call it establishment, right? Within the MAGA core base, and obviously is getting Democrats riled up, justifiably so. So let's dip into the Tulsi Gabbard in Russia paradox, if you want to call it. Her recent allegations, she declassified the documents show, the Obama officials manipulated certain parts in the Russian interference assessment into a false intelligence conspiracy. Politician, media, Lindsey Graham's demanding a special counsel. Obviously, Obama's not going to admit, he's going to deny, right? Pundits are skeptical. While there may be some truth to it, I don't think there's a smoking gun. But if anybody thinks that presidents don't do things like this, and other people within certain branches don't, you're sadly mistaken. The vast majority don't. I would not say that Barack Obama himself did or didn't do it, because I don't know. But that's just kind of some of the latest stuff. I would really hope he wouldn't do something like that, because I tend to think a little bit higher up in terms of character. The significance. What does this mean for trust in the intelligence and the partisan divides? Because, everything's partisan divide here. She released over 100 pages of this stuff. It's crazy. She said that it was a senior Obama official engaged in treasonous conspiracy. So, that's been quoted by the Daily Beast. The Daily Beast, I'm trying to see here. So we got the Daily Beast confirmed it, New York Post, Daily Caller, Times of India, Town Hall, the White House, military.com, the Post, Wikipedia, Times, and news.com in Australia. So getting back to it, Gabbard's report is arguing that Obama, Brennan and Clapper and Comey knowingly suppressed the intelligence. And apparently there was a daily briefing in 2016 explaining this, part of the presidential day briefing showing no foreign cyber attack altered election infrastructure. So, that's the first time I'm really hearing about that. I'm sure a lot of people too, but, that's kind of the basis for her claims. And a lot of it included the Steele dossier. It was a political motivated situation paid by the Clinton campaign. Everybody kind of knows about that. They override internal analysts. A lot of it wasn't verified internally and things of that nature, right? We've got to do better with that. In no way, shape, or form should any politician be able to financially or in any way influence if something's valid or not when you're trying to get intelligence on a situation like that. We have to do better. I don't care if it's MAGA, Democrats, Libertarians, Green Party, whoever. That shouldn't be okay, because then how do we really know what's going on? She labels it, it is considered a political intelligence operation, right? It's trying to legitimize Trump's election, but also, Trump kind of did, not to that degree, or not that little, but 2020, January, or 21, January. The stuff that she published kind of partly relies on a report from 2020, the House committee, I believe is the Intelligence Committee, that, it contradicts the bipartisan findings of the Senate, which is definitely kind of weird, because usually that stuff's, while differences is kind of lockstep to a degree, and that information that information was referenced from the New York Post, just that tiny little tidbit. Critics, a former CIA officer involved in the Mueller investigations have said about Gabbard's claims that they're baseless and politically motivated, affirming that the Russia probe was rooted in verified intelligence and it was not partisan. Sorry, but there's very little in Washington these days that is not partisan. Of course, Lindsey Graham is going to, come running to defense. Gabbard's he demanded special counsel, which I think if there is some legitimate stuff in these documents beyond what we know, maybe, a special counsel might be warranted. It wouldn't matter who's president. They've had other oversight reviews. People are critical of it. But, I think they got to really, really dig deep into that and push the envelope a little bit further to see where it is. I don't think there's any smoking gun out there, but we'll see. Kind of moving on to Trump and Epstein, the photo dump, like what's new? CNN, I believe they were the ones who published it first. I'm pretty sure, but they recently covered, never before published photos and raw video footage of interactions between Trump and Jeffrey Epstein during the 90s. Epstein attended Trump's wedding in two Marla Maples in 93. Footage from a 1999 Victoria's Secret fashion show shows Trump conversing with Epstein. The images also, there's other images that show Trump standing with his children, Eric and Ivanka, while Epstein stands nearby. Epstein stands nearby at the opening of a Harley Davidson cafe in New York. When Trump was quote unquote, confronted with it, he responded, "You've got to be kidding me," and he called it fake news. Well, sorry, Mr. President. Yeah, that picture don't lie. I mean, could it be AI generated? Yeah, I'm not saying that it's not, but I find it very highly unlikely. His administration has said that the photos were taken out of context. They were innocuous, not that big of a deal. But I think that it goes to show, even if he isn't on the list and didn't go to the island, it shows more of a link than what he said, and that hurts his credibility, considering it's a big thing part of what MAGA ran on. So that's definitely a disappointing situation. Michael Wolff has claimed, the Epstein had Polaroid photos of Trump with topless young women, some sitting in his lap at, Epstein's Palm Beach residence. He's saying that these may now be part of what the FBI seized in its raids, but none have been made public. I don't know if I buy that part because, they've leaked a lot from Trump's previous administration. I think they would have had no issue, oopsies, dropping that one out there. It's what political enemies seem to do to each other these days. So I don't know if I buy that one completely. I mean, if it's true, he should be impeached and arrested. I mean, simple as that. And obviously there's additional claims coming out. A former Trump casino executive, he said that Trump once brought Epstein underage girls onto the floor of the casino, which violated New Jersey law. Investigators gave them warning, but no charges were filed. But the accusations are now casting a shadow bigger over Trump's relations with him. But again, Trump strongly denies it. In a broader context, Trump described their falling out as resulting from Epstein allegedly hiring his employees. He was essentially trying to say they were stealing them. He denied ever visiting Epstein's private island, though. And he stated he's had severed ties with Epstein years before allegations surfaced, calling the decision one of his brightest moments. I mean, he did sever ties with Epstein, but is that because he knew it was coming? Or did he do it when he found out, what was, quote unquote, really going on? But now, it's 2 decades later. It's really hard to explain a lot of it, I guess. Definitely when it comes from the Trump part, but there's going to be some political fallout from this. No criminal allegations yet, but the public trust is definitely going to be hurt for Trump, and he's going to have a hard time convincing the middle ground, the middle of the road voters, independent voters or swing voters, however you want to word them, to vote for MAGA supported Republicans in the midterms. You're going to have a hard time going, well, if he endorses him, vice versa, right? So that could be a problem. This situation right here could cost Republicans the 2026 election, the midterms. So we shall see. Kind of moving over to the stock market, man. Even Bill Maher said that he was wrong about the tariffs. I'm not in support of broad tariffs, but I do think targeted situations are good for everybody. The S&P just closed out at a fresh high on July 25th, I should say. And, then the NASDAQ has broke records as well recently. Sally predicts S&P could reach 7,200 by the middle of 2026. They're saying it's going to be a big AI, the new trade deals coming up, and obviously the new tax package, I'm sure, will be benefiting that kind of situation. And that's great for everybody's 401k. I know everybody's 401k took a big hit earlier this year. That was kind of scary, right? But now, it seems to do that, but we also need them. In the midst of all this, the government's got to find a way to balance that budget and bring the value of the dollar up so that way inflation cools down. And you and I can actually afford to buy something. $20 will get you more than a hamburger. That would be nice, don't you think? I think so too. So I mean, while some of the things that he's done will help inflation in the long term from skyrocketing again, I think it definitely could have done more to bring it down in the short term that he didn't do, that he promised he would do. So that is definitely something that's going to weigh on the voters' minds over the next year. We all want government transparency. We all want political accountability, economic optimism versus risk. Remember, the president said, like about the stock market, he said, don't buy into the panic, but everybody did because a lot of people are so anti-Trump that if somebody that's anti-Trump says something, they take it as truth. Well, that's the same as a MAGA person taking no matter what Trump says is true. So you kind of have to look at things in the broader context. A lot of people that are investors said, don't panic. What did almost everybody do? Panicked. That caused a big collapse. Not even a big collapse, but that caused the drop there. So that wasn't good. I know that he did just close the trade deal with the European Union. So, and I believe we have a 15% tariff on all imports coming to the United States that we place on all European goods. You know, these tariffs are definitely going to hit earnings volatility. I believe General Motors has said they've already seen like $1 billion expense on the tariffs, essentially. You know, so that's going to definitely put some pressure on. But, you know, obviously the government's seeing record high revenues from the tariffs. Well, problem with that is the government spending hasn't adjusted. If you're getting record high revenues and tariffs and you adjusted your spending, okay, well, now we got something to talk about, right? Well, that's not the case. So, you know, we got to do things a little bit different. We got to find ways to balance that budget and cut these things out. You know, I hope that they do. I hope everybody stays cool out there. There's a lot of record heat waves going through the country this week, the United States. Hopefully President Trump can negotiate a deal and get aid workers into Gaza, and shame on Netanyahu for bombing, hopefully not intentionally, but aid workers dying. These people were there completely innocent. So hopefully he can, right? Those poor children and people there, they need food. You know, there's a lot of people there that are innocent, not a part of any terrorist group, that have the right to food. They don't have the ability. They can't even leave. They can't even go get a job. They, like the one thing we talk about in America, like, get a job, support yourself. Well, these people can't even do that. They can't even support themselves. Oh, excuse me. So it's a little bit different than it is for us here. So, you know, hopefully it'll work out for them. That would be nice. And don't forget to subscribe, comment, follow below, and, you know, hit up on all social platforms, you know, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We're on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it. We're probably on it. You can also check us directly out at Buzzsprout, you know, and feel free to join our Patreon for as little as $5 a month. I mean, it's pretty basic, you know, nothing that's going to be crazy expensive and drive you to the poorhouse, and it helps us bring good content. And share the stuff with your friends so we can keep doing more. Hope this catches everybody doing well. And don't forget to check out this Wednesday, July 30th, a drop with, you know, a big drop interview. It's going to be awesome, terrific, with a good buddy of mine, Brent. He's a former CIA counterterrorism analyst. You know, we really got some good stuff in, talking a lot about situations that are going on. So I encourage you to really, 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 really tune in. Okay, thank you, and I hope everybody has a good day.